A lot of knitters find the prospect of a design like this with many colour changes a little depressing on the grounds of having to darn in the tails. So here's a method of neatening both of the tails as we do the stripes up this hat. So to begin my new colour, I'm tucking it underneath my old one. And working my first stitch of my new colour, and the new colour yarn is linked around the old piece of yellow yarn. And now I can weave that tail in at the back of the work, just as if I were weaving in ferrule. So if I lift the tail up, making sure my yellow tail stays there, I can knit my second stitch of the new colour, and don't bring the tail through, take the tail off the needle and bring the stitch up. This time keeping the tail down. When I go to knit the next stitch, it gets tucked in there. When I go to knit the next stitch, lift the tail up. So I'm knitting one stitch below the tail, one stitch above the tail, and this weaves it in quite effectively. So at this point you might be saying to yourself, that's all very well for the start of the round, but you can do the same at the end of the round if you remember. So here's my start of round, and I've got 7 stitches left. If I go into that stitch ready to knit and lift the tail up, I can then knit and sandwich the tail in, and then every alternate stitch I'm going to lift the tail over the needle and knit underneath it. Next stitch I'll knit over the top, and I go underneath, over the top, and one more underneath, and there's the last stitch, and my tail is now neatened. And if there's any adjustment required, you can pull on the tails to tighten up these stitches in the middle, or you can slack them off by just giving this a little stretch once it's off the needle. And that's both tails dealt with and can be trimmed a little bit shorter later on. Here's one I forgot. That can be darned in the opposing direction to that yellow tail with a darning needle. And here's one that was completed actually as I was knitting, and really it's done and doesn't need anything further except trimming to about 1/3 of an inch on the inside.